Dear students, now we are going to discuss the terminology related to sampling and then sampling techniques and also about population of the study, right? Because these terms and terminologies are really important in the field of research, right? Population and sample. Population is basically the entire mass of observation, right? And it is basically the universe which you would like to explore as the part of your research studies, okay? So population is the entire object of your observation, which you would like to observe, which you would like to study, right? The entire mass of that is your population. And in other words, it's basically the group of all members, all individuals, right? All objects, maybe in some cases, right? So that's the group which is your population of the study. And the point is that those members, those individuals of the group, those are basically the people, those are the objects to whom you would be generalizing your study, right? So to whatever point you go for generalizing your study is the range of your population, right? So your population is basically the entire mass of this observation, and the entire group of individuals to whom you would generalize your studies and the results of your studies, okay? So that is your population. Since it is impossible to access every individual of the population, every member of the group of your population, it's beyond possibility, right? For example, if you would like to study the population of EFL, English as foreign language, right? So every person who is, learning or teaching English as foreign language is your population. So that's impossible. So in order to just cover and recover this gap of impossibility, we would like to go for sampling, right? We would be taking samples from the population on such a technique, on the basis of such a technique, and then in the light of such a accurately designed research procedures and research design, that whatever sample we take is ultimately the best possible representation of the whole population, right? So that is basically the sampling terminology and the sampling technique, right? So population is basically the entire mass of our observation, right? And it is the group which include all members, all individuals, right? And sample is basically the data, the information which is to be taken. And in order to test hypothesis, we need that data. So from whom the data is taken is our sample, right? From the objects, from the individuals, we would take the data. And data is basically the set of information, the facts, right? The facts or the numbers, the numericals or the information, which we would take from the selected sample, right? That in order to test our hypothesis, right? So that is our sample. There are some other words, some other terms which are used for a sample, like subject is a term which is used for sample. Then we also use informant for sample, like we are informed by our sample. So we also use this term, informant. And then we also used a participant, a term for our sample, because those samples are basically participating in our studies, right? So we use these terms also for samples. And there are, cases, in some cases, when one or more cases are, the part of our research, right? So a case or inanimate objects they can also be your sample, right? Your study may be based on human beings. So human beings might be your informants, your subject, your participants. But your study can also be based on inanimate objects. Like you may be working on newspapers. You may be developing a corpora, right? You may be developing a corpus, right? So these are your samples then, right? So it could be inanimate objects as well, right? Then there are two examples which I would like to give here. Like one study which was done by Su in 2001 that included 122 Chinese and English, speakers of English, right? So in that case, the 122 people who took part were the sample of the study, right? And we can also have a sample where only one participant is there, where only one subject is providing the information. And the example is that Simon Borg in 1998, he actually conducted a study which was based on one single teacher, right? So the number is not really actually relevant. The point is that how do you design your research study? And how would you address your research question? How would you come up with the answer? That would determine that how many sample or how large the sample is required, right? What should be the size of the sample? So the sample is actually the person or the object or the place from where the data is coming. And that data is used in order to test the hypothesis, in order to answer the research questions, okay? So sample from where the data is coming, right? And it is our data source to answer research questions and then to test the hypothesis. And sample is basically taken when all the important characteristics, all the important attributes and features of the population are found in the sample, right? So characteristics of a specific group are then found in the sample because sample is the representative of the population, right? And those various attributes and features, these are must to be there in the sample. Now, how would we select a sample which should ideally have every important attribute, every important characteristic of a population group, right? How could that be done? That would be discussed later. But the point is that population, the entire mass of your observation, and sample from where you actually take the data, right? In order to test your hypothesis. And a sample is basically the representation of the population.